My early education became more exciting as the years rolled by. During the primary school days, I enjoyed the games we played in the playground, which was layered with tiny rounded stones. Later, I played soccer and conducted science experiments in the laboratory, where I discovered static electricity producing equipment. Yet it all felt so familiar, as if I had been working with them not so long ago. I was already talking about how they worked, thus stunning some of my teachers about how I, the little primary school kid, knew all these things before they even spoke about them. At high school, I was interested in human anatomy, art, and making music. It generally meant so much to me, even at that young age. This is also when I discovered wire recording equipment from a very long time ago, and to my surprise, my classroom teacher gave me a small bobbin of recorded wires to keep. During my adult years, when experimenting with old antiquities, I was able to transfer those extremely valuable recordings onto reel-to-reel tapes. Although on Monday mornings we assembled to sing hymns and the national anthem, I was neither interested nor very keen about them. I preferred to remain in the classroom. It was very cold in the winter's chill, and we used to stand by the hot steam heaters, which were warmed by a giant furnace under the school. Eventually, when the classrooms were sufficiently warm, everybody entered the old building and took their seats with the usual commotion. I was to discover similarities of such familiar trends and school activities with other parts of the European continent. It was the same everywhere I have been. Some of the hymns sung in those days were either religious or nationalistic. The young were constantly encouraged to show their respect to the national flag and national heroes, who were adored and worshipped. If not national heroes, either religious figures or a religious deity was worshipped when assembled in the schoolyard. I learnt about the history of nations, somewhat in an extremely biased way, which I later realized when an adult. It seemed that almost all humans lived to fight, engage in conflicts, and excitedly die on battlegrounds. Even their holy scriptures were full of dark stories. Every part of the human history I was learning about was full of bloodshed and destruction. National heroes had been fighting the enemy comprised of other humans, sacrificing their lives for our nation's survival and evolvement. Some of my classmates were so excited about the prospect of becoming a soldier to fight for their nation. It was probably the only noble thing they were interested in. However, to me, at that young age, it did not make any sense, because I thought these young humans like me would be far better off if they only aimed to live and learn to advance, rather than sacrifice themselves, doing more beneficial things for the world and humanity. I saw too many unhappy and miserable people. Some had no home, others lived on the streets and were starving. Others had missing limbs and sickly. Whenever I met people who were poor or begging for bread, my heart went out to them. I always offered my packed school lunch or sandwiches to them, for I was so happy to see people smile. Occasionally I spoke about these matters with my brother, but I was not sure whether he felt the same way. On the other hand, my childhood has been saturated with many colorful dreams. I dreamt of other worlds, space, stars, and a better future. It was also necessary to escape the harsh realities surrounding me while hoping for better things, wondering if the world was to remain just the same in utter madness as it was then. Mark 4:22 states, "For there is nothing hid, except to be made manifest, nor is anything secret, except to come to light." I was immensely interested in all things, shapes, colors, sounds, images, faces of people, and even mechanical technology. In some peculiar sense, I was making comparisons and analyzing what I seemed to have left behind. I was endeavoring to discover some meaning behind all those things and events. In other words, I was attempting to comprehend my own complex world. This trend was to last for the rest of my life. My brother had very similar tendencies, but was extremely shy about expressing himself. He too has been subjected to many downgrading comments by some of our relatives about his intelligence and being very thin, like a sardine lost in the sea, thus making him lack in self-confidence. Since they were still very young themselves, did our cousins realize how much hurt they caused? I felt very hurt, but preferred to ignore them as if they did not exist. This was not due to my disliking them, but considering them as just being very naive. This has helped me greatly not to fall into that same trap. The younger of the two was 8 years older than me and 10 years older than my brother. But our mother took no note of their sarcasm, perhaps believing that they were older than us, therefore supremely intelligent, for after all, they were her favorites, whom she worshipped. When there were any issues in regard to us boys' personal development, or when we were discovering all about our bodies as we matured, she always attempted to involve them in order for them to teach us the right way, in the process thoroughly embarrassing us without realizing it. That may be due to her not being educated enough about the nature of boys, or having no partner to rely on to teach us right from wrong. In theory, it could also have been the way she was brought up. My brother and I were very similar to each other, so no wonder many others thought we were twins. Even our interests were almost identical. We were both keenly interested in the sky, the stars, and travel into space. We were both very adventurous. Furthermore, when very young, I was keenly interested in discovering how everything made the human body function, and found the difference between girls and boys fascinating. One day in our backyard, I invited a number of girls from the neighborhood to play a game of doctors and nurses. I remember asking them to take their knickers off and urinate on the ground to see how they were doing it. Some had a steady stream, while others got their legs wet. Noticing what was happening through the back window, my mother chastised me. The girls were immediately sent home, and my cousins notified forthwith to talk to me about what immoral things I was engaged in. However, I had no evil intent, just being a very curious young boy. I did not even know about what was normally and ritually performed between the sexes when they were mature. I remember being treated as an immoral and rebellious child. It may have been thought a terrible and sinful act on religious grounds. With the encouragement of my aunt and one of my grandmothers, I was forced to declare my sins to the parish priest. Consequently, it encouraged me to conduct my unique experiments more often, only in secret from then on. Another pastime I invented was originally an experiment. I was beginning to discover the reality of the cause and effect principle. I was also observing the behavior patterns of common houseflies, and could not fathom why they were part of life around me. Soon I discovered, much to my mother's disgust, how to catch them by their legs. It was so easy, after attracting them to where I wanted them to be, just by thinking about their movements or imposing my own will. Then I tried colored threads of cotton on their waists at short lengths, delicately and carefully, so as not to hurt them. I would then release them, and they made a beautiful display of color as they flew all around the room, much to the surprise and delight of my mother's clients and visitors. It seemed the flies did not mind the experience. Besides, they were at least doing something better than just annoying people, entertaining them. At other times, my brother and I had many exciting and shared dreams. It sounds strange, does it not? But it is true. Let me tell you just one of them, as I remembered, and he also confirmed. One morning, I woke up and told Haldon about our flight together to the moon in a dream. I noticed him floating just beside me. He immediately confirmed exactly what he experienced during that flight, and told me he was often behind me. We shared all we remembered with each other. I was not surprised, and neither was he. We both flew to the moon, and when closer gazed upon the craters, rocks, and soft sandy plains. We looked at the earth from that distance. It was so blue and beautiful. It seemed we had crash-landed on the lunar rocks, but were unheard. In reality, it was more real than that. My brother looked a little worried then, and I decided to draw the image of the moon as I remembered, with all its details on a piece of paper. When I showed him that image, he screamed and showed signs of fear. Our mother rushed to the rescue as usual, and told him that it was only a picture, but nothing calmed him down. Whenever I attempted to show him that image, he cried and screamed. So I decided to hide it. However, in those days no man had ever stepped on the moon's surface, and it wasn't to be until the late 1960s. Interestingly, the image I drew after our shared dream showed the same or similar features as the astronauts photographed. Shortly after our shared outing, I thought that perhaps the experience of falling onto the moon's surface triggered a frightening memory of the occasion for my brother. Or was it perhaps some other past tragic event he may have recalled? Did the image I drew remind him of someone in his possible past? When we made mention of our unique journey to our mother, for she was the only person around us who would listen, she took it as being young boys' vivid imaginations. But I knew that the telescope my brother and I invented using our grandmother's glasses showed a vista that we had actually experienced in our unique dream. Even this experience our mother felt she had to share with her favorite nephews, Antoine and Georg, considering them being more mature and more understanding of these matters. Later I found them ridiculing my drawing of the moon. They tried to convince us that it was only a dream and that we should not take it seriously like idiots. According to our mother, they always had to be right. Despite all that, I knew she loved us and did everything possible for our health and happiness, for which I am eternally grateful.